Well, thank you all for being here. This is an immense subject, and I've pondered it at many points in my life, and it is with us every day, both because of what it just is and because of what it's been made of and the kind of uses and necessities that it has played in the historical formation and functioning of the State of Israel and the Zionist movement. And I'd like to divide my talk into first an introductory section on what the Holocaust is and how do we conceptualize it and the various racisms that enter into it, and then into a discussion of the role of Zionism in the Holocaust, which is a very peculiar one, to say the least, and then a discussion of the relationship of the Holocaust and its moral logic to the conduct of Israel, the Israeli state, bringing it up to date with some rather ironic twists. Now, every human event is unique, to be sure. I mean, I got up this morning, nobody else in the whole history of the world ever got up in exactly the same way. But for purposes of discussion, we can lump them all together, people getting up in the morning. The Holocaust has tended to defy that kind of categorization, and there's been a distinct effort to render it as absolutely unique and historically unprecedented and without any kind of points of comparison. And that's a very dubious statement, and it's one that I would like to address at the beginning of my remarks, and then to show you how it is a very dubious statement and why it has to be viewed with a critical eye, just like every human phenomenon has to be viewed with a critical eye. There's really two ways of absolutizing the Holocaust. One is to deny it, and that is an odious movement, although it's people who say that the Holocaust didn't happen or didn't happen really in the same way it's thought to have happened, deserve their right to speak, although and do not deserve. Excuse me, is this an amplifying mic?
It's just a saving point.
Oh, it's an amplifying mic. It's not a recording. Yeah.
No.
And deserve to be imprisoned the way it is the case in a number of nations. And the other extreme is to say that the Holocaust is incomprehensible, as, for instance, the Zionist ideologue Elie Wiesel has said, that we must be silent and all we can do is bear witness to it, and there is nothing that could possibly be understood about a phenomenon of such absolute evil. I submit that both of those extremes, either to deny it or to say that it is incomprehensible and incomparable, are instrumental in the purposes of Zionism, and they must be combated by a judicious reflection into the historical nature of the Holocaust. The Holocaust is a sort of specimen of state-sponsored mass murder, and if the state in question was Nazi Germany, mass murder, when it is carried out with the intention of eliminating a people or has an entire people in its sights, is genocide, and there's no question that the Holocaust is an instance of genocide. There's also no question, however, that there are other instances of genocide, and it's possible to make useful comparisons. We can maybe do some more of that in the question period. I want to focus now upon the Nazi experience and focus upon the racism which motivates it and motivated it, namely the phenomenon of anti-Semitism, or as is probably better to say, Judeophobia. This is a word that is not widely used, but I think it's actually a more useful term, since for one thing, nobody's a Semite, really, if you come right down to it. I mean, that doesn't mean anything to me. But the Judeophobia means, and certainly the Ashkenazi Jewish people who settled Palestine and were the among principal victims of Nazi exterminism were not of Oriental or, quote, Semitic, unquote, origins. As I say, that's a sort of a useless term to begin with. But they are designated and designated themselves as Jews. And Judeophobia is a form of racism, no question about it, which is has an enormous history in and of itself. We can usually spend the rest of the day, not just this session, discussing the history of anti-Semitism and of course the history of the Jewish people is so, the history of Judeophobia, the history of the Jewish people was so extensive, so scattered throughout the world in so many different instances. A few generalizations can be made that principally this phenomenon of Judeophobia played itself out in Christendom, in the Christian ecumene, and it has to do with the perception that the Jew within that ecumene is the other, is the non-Christian and the bearer of the peculiar degree of sinfulness within the Christian world.